first thing we need to do is make a rough drawing of just a quick sketch of what this room is going to look like when you put all the pieces you so carefully put together as reference pictures, what it's going to look like when they work together. So as with our box drawing, we're going to start at the back, and first thing always is to put in your horizon line. I'm using a pen. I think you should use a pen because you don't want to erase. You don't have time for erasing. The other idea about using the pen is that it will keep you working quickly and lightly. So I know these are just light lines. I want to be able to go over them and show what I truly want to be in here in place of them in some cases. I have my piece. It's a chandelier of sorts, a little bit fancy, but I think it will go with what I have in mind here. So I'm going to start. I don't want it to hang any lower than the 7 feet. I know where the center is, but this has a smaller ellipse. Then it has the wide ellipse. It's above eye level, so I know it goes over. And all I have to do now is just round this out. But remember, this was the center, so I have to keep that going. And then it has a little bit of a slenderness here. And it has a slender sort of neck here. And this is kind of the head of the whole thing. And another little flourish at the top here. But see how I'm keeping all my ellipses curved, and this is some sort of semblance of what we see there, and that will be how it will attach to the gable at the top. Now that's enough for this sketch. That's enough, and when I do it for real, I'll map out a box with a particular ellipse inside, you know, the diagram that we use, and work from there. Now at the very back we have our window treatment, and I think I've shown you what I've chosen. I like this, but on my fireplace I'm going to introduce this arc. So I love this framework. I'm going to repeat it on my fireplace. I'm going to repeat it on my bookcase. So I'm going to just start a little bit at my window here. I think I might go up even a little higher. Since we have the gable, I can go up a little bit higher. And I'm not worried about detail. I'm just thinking about how would I get from here to there, and this seems like the right size for that, and I'll put that here. And then my arc will be somewhere from here to here. So I'm getting a lot of curves in my drawing. That's my visual concept. I love that this is just a square and kind of pointy room with my gable, but I'm able to soften it with all the curves that I've been able to find and implement. Okay, so when I hang my draperies, my blinds, my shades, I'm going to leave that arc showing. I like it. So I'm going to leave the top of the arc showing, and I'm going to start my blinds from here down. I'm going to start my draperies from here down. So they're actually a little higher. I might start the draperies there. See how in my reference picture the actual drapery, the shades begin after the molding. So I can have my draperies start here, and they make a lovely arc as well. So they're tied over here. I want to see that tassel, and I'm just going to let them puddle on the floor the way they puddle here. So I'm thinking, what am I thinking? I'm thinking about that's going to cover that after all, but I know it's there. It's part of my thinking, so that if the drapes are completely pulled aside, maybe in this case you leave them straight on this side. We could see what that would look like, having them straight on this side so that we could see the curve, the gentle arc. And would maybe have me start these over here. So maybe that would work over here. So you're thinking, that's what you're thinking about. What would work where? If I just started to draw this as a final picture, a final decision, I might not get the best result. I would just be copying what I see, not really thinking about what I want to get. So you have to really spend this time on this little quick sketch. And then of course I have my lady in place. I had to outline her a little thickly before I began this drawing because she was just even though her lines were heavy when I first traced her, they've become very light now that I've reduced her. So I had to beef her up a little bit. As I mentioned on my bookcase, I'd like to put that same molding, that same those beautiful shapes. So I'm going to put half a foot here. I've got a foot there. I'm going to put half a foot, and I'm going to I don't care if it's straight or not. I just have to get this worked out roughly. And I know what half a foot is up here. I can put that in. So now I've got that large piece of molding on the outside. Now I want that curve on the inside, so I'm going to lose a little bit of my now I'm going to just do this quickly so that I can find out where the center is up here, and then I just divide this into 3 parts, and I'll have an arc. I have the arc I'm looking for. Now, does it look exactly like the window frame? No. Is it going to look exactly like the fireplace? No, the proportions are slightly different, but it has that same feel. It's introducing a curve. Remember, that was my visual concept. I like the idea of adding some curves in to a space that was essentially very square and pointy with the gable. Okay, so I'm going to leave that as one whole shelf now. I don't have to have all of those shelves. I can leave it as one. The depth is the same, so I have the same lines to follow for that. And I could start filling those shelves now with items, and I have a little bit of reference for that as well. I wanted to see what sort of points of interest I might be able to add. So there are photos, so I'd use my vanishing point to make sure I got the photos in right. There are books. Books, again, that's the eye level, so that's a straight line. So that would be easy. I'm just having to make sure that I have enough room beside the photo, that I have enough room for it to fit on the shelf. There's the back of the shelf, so I've got enough room there. Now down here, I like some of these little bottles, but you start the bottles from the bottom and bring them up so that you make sure you have enough room for them. These little jugs are interesting. They're symmetrical, so I've got to keep my eye on that. Keep my eye on a center line. Make sure I've got that going. Then I could have a couple of books that are sitting this way. They don't all have to sit the normal way. Then this has to go back. So I've got a top plane on my books, front plane on my books, but I have to use my vanishing point. Remember, you have to use that to figure this out. And so that would be a good way. It would be nice here, though, I'm rethinking this, it would be nice to have a large vase with some flowers in it. That would be, they could hang out and over. That would, I think, be nice. And then you could have a little bit of cove lighting, the lighting up inside of that arc. And then this will have a thickness as well. So I'll have to just make sure I have a thickness on that I can show. So this will be the front plane, that's the side, and it brings it a little closer as well. I have my sofa, which is for me a chaise, so I've got that here. This is my chaise, so the characteristic of that again is fits with my concept. I want some squares, some circles in this square kind of pointy space. So I need to take this box that I started with and round it out, and I would round it out the same way that I rounded out this arc and any of the other arcs that are important to me. So I'm going to decide where the arcs, I've got a thickness of a back here, so I've got to make my arc earlier. So I'm looking at this and thinking I'm going to make those round. So I make an X and find the center, and then I make a V from the center, and divide into 3. Now I have no idea whether this is going to give me the curve that I want, but that seems okay. And I'll do the same back here, and divide into 3. And that gives me the curve that I want here. And that will be how my arm wraps around. So you see how my arm wraps around. So now it's just a matter of this being round, round here, round here. I've got a short little leg to put on. I'm judging the space between here and here. So, and it's quite round, so it keeps in with my concept. And my lady will sit. How will she look in this environment? Is she going to cooperate or not? And so I just need a little quick look at her to see whether she's going to like it and she's happy with the space. Yes, she seems okay. She doesn't seem to mind. And then I have to judge where to place this back piece. Now, it's not as high as this arm, and it's not as high as this back. I'm going to save the height of that back for the height of this. So I know now that this is a round piece, and from the front, it kind of curves round. So remember that along with all of this careful drawing of boxes, there's sketching to do when you're looking at more organic shapes, and this is a more organic shape. So that's my arm coming forward here. That might be too big, but better to find that out now than later when I'm working on my final drawing. So I've used perspective to keep everything going in the right direction, the right way. I've established the height, and I've got a little piece in here. So I'm working on this now. I can see the front of that, and I can see the front of it here. I can tell by my box, the way my perspective is going. I know that I can see some of this. And it's sticking in. It's actually a T cushion, this top one. There's a T made by this arm, so this is narrower at the back, and this T comes in. So I might move this up. Now it's a mess, but that's okay. That's why we're doing this here, so that we make a mess here and get our thinking all sorted out before we work on our larger drawing. I think I might start this here. I could probably afford to come a little more over with that too. So you see, I ignored the back completely. I just used that to get the height of this, but it didn't really help me with the arm because my arm is lower than our arm is. And so now I just look at what I did back here for the placement of that leg, and I try to do the same up here. Now I have to be stuck in one place so that I don't exceed the boundaries for my camera, but you don't. You can take your paper, move it around, and turn it upside down if you need to draw and to sketch like this. So that's what you should do. And even when you get to the point where you're doing your final drawing, you can do that as well. Move it around. So, because you have your grid lines underneath. Now, you notice I'm not transferring any grid lines here at all. I'm keeping away from them on the grid. I'm just leaving them where they are. I've got carpeting to put in as well, and the carpet that I liked was the one that went with my fireplace. You might have found that as well, that along with the other things in one picture, you found yourself liking other elements within the same picture. These rows of squares fit with my concept because they would go with the square and pointiness of my room. But what else would go with the pointiness are these triangles that I saw on another piece of carpeting. They were attractive, so I could think about using them. So if I put an X in every box, I would have what I needed to make these triangles. They were just lines, mind you. They weren't bands of color, just very subtle beige lines on a beige carpet. So they would work too. I'd be able to put those in. I think I kind of like those, but I'd finish those off. Now, the mirror, I've got 4 feet. So if I take 1 foot off this side, and this is 4 feet here, 1 foot off, we've got 1 foot off this side, I can make that same mirror above my fireplace that I see here. And I'm just going to approximate the proportions, but I know that it's in the center because I counted my boxes. 1 square in from the front edge of my fireplace, 1 square in from the back of my fireplace. And I'm going to, just for this sketch, I'd measure it if I were doing the final one, but just for this sketch, I'm going to roughly sketch in, and then I've got all of these. I just want to do enough of this to make sure it would go with my concept. It's really pointy, so I'm thinking it's going to go with my gable, and the square inside goes with the squares. And then that's what all of my curved things, and my most curved thing, my chaise is my most curved thing. Oh, they had that beautiful drape over it as well. Will stand out all the more if I have more square and pointy things. I have to build back from my fireplace. This is quite thick, this molding around the edge. So I have to come and build in a little bit so that the molding inside will be recessed. So on the same point over here, I have to go in, and it'll be covered, but I need to see that. I need to know that this part is going to be recessed. So let's see, these should line up, so I didn't do it enough back here. And I'll go over this with the thicker pen, but now I've got a little depth built in where all of that molding just goes back and back and back. It's got that facing, and then the molding goes back and back and back, and then I have that curve I want to put in. So I have more molding, and then I have that curve. So let me see, this goes in, this goes on front, this goes in, this goes on front, this goes across, this goes in front. So I will see I will see a little bit. And then the curve goes from this line to this line. Now I'd have to figure that out the way I figured this out, but just to go a little faster here, we'll just do that. And then I've got all of this molding that comes up and across, and I should be using my vanishing point. So I've got a little bit of a recess. I've got this sticking out, just checking my parts. And now I've got this thick molding on the outside. And there is a little gap here between the thickness of the molding and here. So what I would do is bring this curve up a little higher, I think, so that I could approach what I'm seeing a little better, a little more. So, and this is molding on the side. This is all front and molding. And this is all front and molding. This is front with a little bit of side. And this is not at all accurate. It's actually very inaccurate, but it will lead the way to being more accurate than I would have been had I not done this. So you've got shiny things like this shiny mirror and the shiny gold of it. We've got some matte things like this ceramic pots. And we've got the painted wood of the fireplace, the painted wood of the bookcase, and the frame of the window. And I've decided to pull these in so I can see some of that. Now it's time to take a thicker pen and really go in and get a feel for what it is you're doing here. Remember, thicker outside lines, thinner inside lines. That's the way to tell a story so that you can really see what's going on. So here's her elegant foot that we've got. Her elegant high heels adds a little interest to our space. But we don't need to know who she is, just what she represents. I should really put a book on her lap. That would be something that wouldn't normally occur to me to do, but it might be just the right thing for this space. She has a magazine or a book on her lap, and she's just sort of gazing into the distance. And I'm getting too thick now. I've got a little too excited. My lines are getting too thick on the inside. But, so I'll just balance it. Oh, this was a mess, so I've got to fix this up. I show at least what my deciding proportions and lines would be, that they come inside this tea cushion. So that's where that would be. And our carpet, we've got our carpet and our line for our wall. So I suppose it looks like I'm just jumping everywhere, but I started with our focus, and I'm just now trying to see. Remember, the whole reason for this, for what I'm doing now, is to see, is this working? Are these pieces working together? Is my visual concept valid? The idea of finding and using a lot of curves to balance out the pointy gable and the pointy and the squareness of the little room. That squareness, the curves. If you take, remember when we made our sphere out of our I should put mullions. Should put some mullions in the window. That will affect how we view the window space as well. So we'll see those little squares back there always add something to it. And this of course is going over. That's not where it's hanging, remember, that's part of the gable. And this is the front of our room. Now we can let the floor just kind of taper out. If you want, you could even pretend that this keeps going. We know that it doesn't, but you could pretend that it does. So our fireplace is going to stick out, and it's got that curve. Then it goes like this. It goes like this, and then we're going to bring this up so our arc is up higher. Then it goes like this. So the fact that I did all of that heavy correction before is not such a problem now, because I'm going in with my heavier pen. And it had to be done. It had to be done. We had to see what would happen, what this would look like. And we've got all our molding here. This will have to be recessed a little bit too, because we've got all that fancy thick molding on the outside. Don't forget your baseboards, that's very important. And this has a little bit of a side plane. This has a front plane. Again, I can't get too close enough to make this more accurate. I have to keep my big fat head out of the way, so. Can put other things. See all that. That's sort of one of the first things you notice when you enter someone's room are the pictures that they have on their shelves and on their walls. So and this would be planking. I'd have some so that would be wood. We can add wood grain later. And our carpet, we've got the carpet underneath here. And this should be enough to tell you whether or not what you're putting together makes sense, and whether you have a visual concept that you'd like to pursue.